Hello and welcome to UAT Time within the United Countries Special by First Ukraine. You can find us on the frequencies available on our website, firstuat.com. I'm Sergey Velichanskiy.
And I am Olivier Vedrine. UAT Time is dedicated to bring Ukraine and Europe closer to each other by introducing the real Ukraine to the rest of the world.
What is Minsk II agreement? Is that a real deal or it's a subversive deal with the conscience? What can we expect in the near future? Is it a long-awaited peace or it's a cover-up for something else?
Our guest today is Aleksandr Khara, a founder of Maidan for Foreign Affairs.
Welcome.
A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's been a little while of your last visit.
Almost a year.
Almost a year, but seems like nothing changed much. Or am I wrong?
Well, things are changing, it's obviously, but not at that pace that we would like to see, especially in terms of the stopping the war, stopping the Russian aggression on our eastern flank, returning back Crimea and getting back to the normal peaceful life that majority of Ukrainians are willing to. Certainly, it's not enough time to change our country in terms of the political structures, political culture, and certainly in economy. That's why we can admit some positive changes, but from the other hand, there are a lot of things to do.
In his address to the journalists, Petro Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, highly marked the success of Minsk agreements. He pretty much said the difference between how it was before and how it is now. Yes, true, we can observe that there is no such active warfare as it was before, but is that really a success for us?
The president was trying to save his position because he was one of the initiators of the ideas that were like a backbone of the so-called Minsk agreements. But I'm not among those enthusiastic people who thinks that it's possible to solve all our troubles with Russia. I think that so-called Minsk agreements are the recipe for disaster. First of all, when we are talking about Minsk agreements, there are no such agreements in terms of the law. Because it's not an international obligation of Ukraine. It has not been ratified by Ukrainian parliament. From the other hand, and actually there are no signs, signatures on the paper. We've got the paper with some bullet points what to do, and then we've got trilateral committees document signed by the former Ukrainian President Kuchma, which at that time didn't have any powers to sign any documents on behalf of Ukrainian state. That's why from the legal point of view it's a worthless piece of paper. One thing. Second thing, it does not address the real trouble. We should talk about the military aggression, which is defined by the UN General Assembly resolution of 1974. All points from this resolution show that it's a military aggression of the Russian state against Ukrainian state. It's one thing. Second thing, we got occupation of Crimea, and it's not right thing to say that it was an annexation, because we do not recognize annexation. Third thing, with these agreements, there is an Ukrainian side as a part of this agreement, and there is no other side, because we do not consider so-called representatives of the fake republics as in legitimate other side, and the Russians are trying to portray themselves as mediators. So that's why we cannot show that Russians are not really abiding this document, simply because they are not the signatory of this so-called agreements.
But then, Alexander, what we can do if I agree with you, Minsk I is nothing. Minsk II will be
even
also
worse.
yes. then what we can do, what we can expect now?
Well, first of all, there is no military solution at this point. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that Ukrainian side should opt out from the military campaign. It should stay on the same line that is now and try to keep all these irregular forces controlled, created, and financed by Russia. From advancing into deeper our territory. It's one thing. The second thing, we should say to Russians that we're not going to retake this land at this moment, but we are not going to accept their conditions of Minsk agreement political part. To name just few. First, to change the constitution with regard to the so-called decentralization or special status of Donbass, which is it's a real dangerous thing for Ukraine. Secondly, we're not going to implement the so-called limited sovereignty concept of our constitution. One of the major goals of Russia in this aggression is to create such a situation, institutional situation, the legislative situation, that Ukraine is not a sovereign state that can choose European or Euro-Atlantic way of integration. If we are to implement these things, there is no need to have the central government anymore, because everything will be decided in Moscow. And this case scenario is not that people on Maidan or in our cities not occupied by Russia are willing to have in reality. That's why we cannot retake this territory at the moment, but we can freeze this conflict out of our territory. That the Russian state should maintain peace and security, stability, social payments and other stuff on their expenses, because they are occupying these territories. The same thing with Crimea. So we can just freeze this conflict out of our territory, not going to change the constitution the Kremlin wants, the way they want. And this is a sort of solution for Ukraine to survive.
Two weeks ago, yes, I think, yes, the representative of the Russian part of the Minsk agreement came in Kiev.
Rizlov.
Yeah, he was invited by Poroshenko, I think. Is that what?
Well, yeah.
And also the I can say the political advisor, a French political advisor and a German political advisor was there also. That was 2 weeks ago. We talked about that with the ambassador of France. And what do you think about this? I can see this diplomatic ballet. What do you think about that?
Well, certainly there is a really important for Europe issue. It's related to the security. Europe doesn't want to have another black hole, and by the way, black holes created by Russia. To name just few, it's Transnistria in 90s. Then we got Georgian occupied territories by Russian forces and so-called independent republic. And now we got part of Ukraine, to name Crimea and some parts of Donbass. So Europe doesn't want to have a black hole. Secondly, there is a threat posing from the Russian side towards Europeans, and this is a real threat in terms of the conventional military and in terms of the nuclear military. Because if we are talking about the strategic balance, there is a strategic balance, and Russians are not, they are abiding the START 3 treaty. So they are reducing the number of the strategic missiles along with the Americans. But if we are talking about tactical weapons, they are aimed at Europeans. Then Russians are trying to undermine the unity of the European Union, and the last facts that appeared in the media were with this German crisis related to migrants, and then reaction of the Russian community, Russian minorities, trying to show that they are against this waves of migrants. And it's a ridiculous situation. Some previous migrants are trying to show that there is no room for other migrants or Біженці.
The refugees.
For refugees,
Yeah.
so thank you. It shows not just the crisis in Germany itself, but it shows how deep the networks of influence of propaganda of Russia is within the European states, how it's trying to shake in the European unity, it's trying to break the connection between the European Union and the United States, to name NATO.
Yeah, but you know, I saw an article about that was an interview about an interview of Soros, and Soros said that in this interview that for him, Putin will survive 2 years, not more, politically in Russia because of the economic situation. And I think this analysis of Soros is quite good. But I want to talk about this interview of the BBC News that they show. We know what they show. They show that Putin is totally corrupt, and this is an interview in the BBC TV, and that was also an interview of U.S. agency financial. For you, that's mean what? Because for me, that's mean that maybe U.S. and Europe and UK think that this is the end of the power of Putin.
Well, first of all, there is no such a thing like a unity of the West in general, because at this point, the European Union has imposed restrictive measures against the Russian Federation, but there are a lot of voices, and particularly in France, just to cancel this sanctions regime against Russia. So I wouldn't call that there is a common stand, and these TV programs, they are not showing that there is a common stand. In addition to this TV documentary on the corruption in the highest level in the in Russia, there are some other interesting developments. I mean the MH17 report, and secondly, I mean the Litvinenko case.
Yeah.
So it means that the corrupt nature, the unlawful, undemocratic nature of the Putin's regime is absolutely obvious in Europe, and it's impossible to cover it anymore. Certainly, there are some conclusions to which the governments, first and foremost, of the United States came to, and certainly there will be some actions against this corrupt elite and their actions within the Euro-Atlantic community. Americans decided to carry out an investigation of the activities of the Russian special forces and intelligence in the European area, especially in terms of financing the political parties and some activists. It's so important to see how it's dangerous for open democratic societies to be exploited by the authoritarian country with a lot of resources, and first and foremost with a complete idea or with well prepared strategy how to undermine it. So the Russians are using the weak points of the democratic societies. They are financing parties, they are financing media, they are creating NGOs and think tanks that are part of their propaganda, and certainly they've got their Russia Today TV channel as a part of the propaganda machine. So it's important that Europe and the United States realized what sort of threats are from now they realize, no? Because of this BBC documentary, because of the Litvinenko case, I think this is a good point. But I am agree with you. And in France, this is very, very important, because in France, the Front National received some financial aid from. Well, Russians are supporting those who see threats from the United States and the unity of the European Union. That's why they support far left and far right parties.
Yeah.
and which is dangerous simply because it's not dangerous just for Ukraine. We are under the military aggression at the moment, but it's dangerous for Europe and its future itself, because we've got the crisis, the refugee crisis, we've got the Brexit, we've got the crisis with Greece and some other southern countries who are not meeting the standards, the financial standards of the European Union. And that's why whole European project is under threat. And if in terms of the military, look, after the beginning of the occupation of Crimea, there was a summit in Wales, and NATO decided to strengthen its southern and northern flank. Because countries like Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania are threatened from Russia. Just a simple example. The whole military machine of Estonia is 5,500 people. It's a ministry and all soldiers that they have. And just paratroopers of Pskov division is something like 6,000 strong. So in case Russia decides to create a sphere of instability, or decides to conquer this former Soviet lands that have been occupied since 1940s. And actually it's an interesting historic parallel how they were occupied. First there was an ultimatum to the government of Estonia to install the military base on their territory. Then they created a movement of communists. They took power in Estonia. Actually there was a coup d'etat. And then they decided to join the Soviet Union. So it's absolutely the same procedure, absolutely the same technique they used against Georgia and then against Ukraine in Crimea.
Yeah, and yes.
What do you think? How far is the West willing to go with the sanctions? We see at this point that the sanctions do work. The barrel oil, cost is going down, and a lot of, as we talked about, the refrigerator, the fridge is becoming much more emptier than it used to. But is there a purpose to? I mean, it could lead to what? To Russia's collapse, as far as breaking into smaller parts, smaller states?
Well, first of all, it's not in interest of Europe, neither of Ukraine, to have Russia collapsed or break up into the parts. Because it's much easier to deal with one guy, even though he is a bit crazy, who is controlling the nuclear arsenal and a lot of other military toys, rather than have negotiations with people like Kadyrov or other guys. So it's not in interest of these countries, in Ukraine as well. That's why sanctions, as they are aimed to change the behavior of the owner of Kremlin, owner of Russia, because Putin is behaving like a king in the country. It's one thing. Second thing, yes, sanctions are painful for Russia, but they are just getting things worse. And the major cause of problems is the Putin system itself. It's insufficient in terms of the political governance. It's absolutely inefficient in terms of the economy. That's why, even though there were no conflict with Ukraine and there were no sanctions, Russia could have been in the same difficult position like it's now. So I see that these sanctions related to Crimea will be in place until Russia gets Crimea back. But with regard to the Donbass-related sanctions, possibly they will be ceased in the mid of this year after the European community decides that in general the so-called Minsk agreements are fulfilled. And I see the threat that our president is not showing that these agreements are not being fulfilled by Russia, and there is no prospect of having these agreements fulfilled, and that's why we need to renegotiate the whole package and then a new format, because we need to have Americans in. and possibly other countries as well. And we need to have the European institution as an institution to be a part of these talks, not just Chancellor of Germany and President of France. They are good friends of Ukraine, but they got their own interests, one thing, and they are not representative of the European Union as an institution. That's why we need to have them in. And certainly we need to draft a new agenda of negotiations, and there should be not just the ceasefire, withdrawal of weapons and other stuff, and then political settlement, but Crimea as well, because Crimea is the thing that shows that there is no such a thing like a civil war in Ukraine. There is a military aggression, and Russians are trying to portray that there is a civil war, and that's why so-called republics are demanding sort of autonomy. It's not true, because they are really puppets of Russian state. In the beginning, all the heads of so-called republics were Russian FSB operatives, and they were citizens of Russia, simply because there were no separatist leaders on the ground, because there is no separatism in Donbass. For 24 years, there were no political party, no activist, no single idea to get independence or even more autonomy.
Okay. By your observation, what do you think? What kind of moods are prevailing in the Verkhovna Rada, in the Parliament of Ukraine, as far as regarding Minsk agreements and regarding the negotiations, or should we go on, or should we settle for what we've got? What do you think?
Well, certainly there is a general dissatisfaction with these agreements. First thing. Second thing, there is no willingness to adapt new changes to constitution that will create more autonomy for occupied by irregular forces territories. I mean, it's an interesting story that we call them terrorists, and they got hostages, and we are trying to get this legalized. The first ever country in the world which is trying to legalize the terrorists and their rule over their victims, which is absolutely unacceptable. And there is, as I see it, there is a strong dissatisfaction with the agreements, and there is no political will to implement these changes to the constitution, simply because there is a general public support of the changing the shift and changing this, the whole essence of these agreements.
But at the same time, we have EU and France and other countries that they are pulling strings as far as trying to get this special status adopted in the Verkhovna Rada.
Yes, we pushed that. Yes, yeah, I know. And I want to talk about another things. This law about decentralization, because this is also a key point in this Minsk agreement. What do you think about this law of decentralization? In my opinion, and I am agree with you with your question. In my opinion, this law about decentralization is not for now for Ukraine. That means you cannot do for me a law about decentralization where you are in war and a part of your countries under occupation.
But here's the thing: we're talking about decentralization as a normal reform process. But the main thing is the special status. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are against decentralization. It takes time. It's a good way to go. But the special status, that's what people are not in favor.
Okay. Take a parallelism. We are in France in 1940, and the German took part of France. And we ask France to do a decentralization law with the German part, with the part of France who are occupied by German. This is the same.
Well, and actually there was a special opinion of the former Ukrainian judge from the Constitutional Court, Mr. Shishkin, who said that we are effectively in the time of war, And according to our constitution, it's forbidden to change the constitution during the emergency or war. So that's why it's illegal to change
illegal,
the constitution.
it's impossible.
Secondly, there is a huge willingness of Kremlin to impose their ideas on our constitution, which is absolutely unacceptable. It's just for the Ukrainian people and their elected representatives to change the constitution the way we like it. Certainly, we need to change our constitution since we're going to change the model. We would like to have more democracy, more people's will, people's say in our system. I mean, more parliamentarian systems rather than a presidential one. But we cannot change it under the threat from the Moscow, from the Kremlin, and then we cannot do it even with the threat or how to say engagement of our partners from the West. It's up to Ukrainian people, not the people in Brussels, Washington or Moscow, to decide what kind of country we would like to have.
Our time is almost up, but what are the steps that you and others that you know are willing to take to influence the idea of reshaping the negotiations of Minsk I, Minsk II into something new? What near future?
We had a round table with a bunch of prominent Ukrainian think tanks, and we drafted an appeal to the president. What should he do to change the situation? First, he should admit that so-called Minsk agreements are expired simply because if you have a look at the text, there is just one clause related to the time frame, and it's that constitutional reform should be implemented by the end of the 2015.
Okay.
So it's done. So the agreement is off. Second thing, that we are not going to retake by the military our territory, and we will fire back just in self-defense. One thing. The second thing, we are going to adopt several laws. First, on collaboration. Second, on the irregular forces that have been created by Russian Federation. In fact, the army of so-called republics, it's 30,000 strong. They got 250 tanks, more tanks that Germany have and some other countries all combined. They've got something like 5,000 to 7,000 the Russian military on our ground. We've got a huge grouping of the Russians on our border. We've got militarization of Crimea, up to 23,000 soldiers or military personnel on the territory, and they are trying to get more weaponry on the peninsula. So we need to show it to the West that there is an even growing threat from Russia, and the so-called Minsk agreements are not going to solve this. So we need to be a part of the Western team to negotiate with Russians the terms of the stopping the war, the terms of the withdrawal of all these troops, because they are violating a lot of international treaties, and not just because they are occupying our land, but because there are some international commitments of the Russian Federation in terms of the convenient forces in Europe and other. So we need to be a part of the team to get them back. Certainly, we need to strengthen our line of defense, and certainly we should do more reforms, because actually the victory of Ukraine over Russian aggression is in Kiev.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on all the new developments and hope that it's going to work. But at this time, thank you very much for being with us. Yes. It was United Country UAT time by First Ukraine. Our guest was Aleksandr Khara, founder of Maidan of Foreign Affairs.
Olivier Vedrine and Sergey Velichanskiy were working for you in the studio. Stay with us and we will show to you the real Ukraine.
Thank you for being with us. Have a good day and see you soon.